Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Amber de la Garza is on the podcast today. She's a productivity specialist who helps entrepreneurs create actionable solutions to maximize profit, reduce stress, and focus on what matters most to them. Amber also hosts a podcast, Productivity Straight Talk. She and I met at Podcast Movement, a conference for podcasters that happened late this summer. After realizing how many connections we had in common over a lunch meeting, we hit it off. Amber focuses on productivity as a means to leverage profits, and you know how much I love that. You've heard us talk about multiple times about being effective and efficient and profitable. And on our podcast today, Amber shares what she considers to be productivity and what's not. You just might be surprised at how she defines it. We also dig in to quickly help you determine if what you're doing in your business is really productive and profitable. My guess is that Amber and I have many more conversations ahead of us, and I know you're going to love the intersection of productivity and profits because we both do. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Amber, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be doing this interview today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you as well. You're kind of like a yin to my yang here. So I think that's
I think productivity and profitability is a love affair for sure. They go definitely together.
No doubt, no doubt. As I mentioned in the intro a few minutes ago, you and I met in person at Podcast Movement and had an awesome conversation, and multiple times as we kept running into each other.
We did. I remember them vividly. I'm so glad we got to connect there.
Yeah, me as well. And then we found out we had so many other friends and people that were in common. And you spoke to, I think you did a lunch and learn for the WCAA.
I did do a lunch and learn there. It was great. It was a breakfast and teach for me because I'm Pacific Standard, but it was lunch and learn on the East Coast.
That's right. Breakfast and teach. I love that. And I've been a member of the WCA for probably, 15 years, something like that. I've been on the board for years and I'm retired from the board now, but just a group that I hold near and dear to my heart and I'm still active in. So it was so exciting to see you there. And then you've been on Luann's, and we just had so many other connection points that it was fun to meet and get to find all those. It was like an Easter egg hunt.
Exactly. I'm surprised Facebook didn't already decide we should be friends. You know, they're pretty sneaky like that, knowing that we have connections that we didn't realize till we met at the conference. Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt. But, you and I chatted a little bit, and of course, my ears perked up when I hear productivity, because having owned a drapery workroom business for 16 years, we talk efficiency and productivity, and it's about getting work done, and work can take on like any of the things we talk about. And I know you and I are going to get into some definitions and the way we like to define things for our means and what we're doing. But even the word work, like we had to get work done. And I'll just tell you, one of the biggest things, I had a group coaching call with my designers inner circle yesterday. And one of the things, the comments that one of the members made, and it's so true, and it resonated with everybody in the group. She said, in my day-to-day activities, by the time I'm trying to, meet the client, create a window treatment, create a design, have it installed, do my accounting, do the bookkeeping, do whatever marketing I have. Like, I have no time to do anything else. Where does all the rest of this get done? Like, I'm exhausted, and it's taking all of my energy just to get through a day. I'm certain that that is something you've never heard before, right? You've never heard that sentiment.
Never. I don't know. That story just doesn't sound familiar. I mean, right? I've heard it a bazillion times, and that's really why I started my business, right? Like, because I actually did hear that story. And the story that I heard and saw when I was a business coach in the real estate industry was, they had resources at their fingertips. They had a vision, they had the dream. And they would come to each session really kind of defeated, saying, I'm so overwhelmed working in my business. I have no time to work on my business. And I didn't know it then, but that was the seed that was planted, that almost a decade later, I actually started my company specifically to teach the skill set of productivity to business owners so that they don't have to say that any longer.
Right. And it's something that we all struggle with at some point in time, or that we start to struggle. Like for me, because like I'm a huge fan of E-Myth, right? I'm a huge fan of all of these things. I've got the Get It Done. I've got every book in the world behind me. And I do the things that I read, like I implement these things, right? But it's interesting to me how nothing stays the same. And so there starts to begin this creep again at maybe not being as productive as we could. So it's not like, just like I spoke to Jamie Lieberman earlier about legalities, and it's a breathing document. We've got to constantly go back to it. Our productivity is kind of the same way. It's got to be addressed more. It's not like we're going to go get it all fixed one time and then walk away and we're done forever.
Yes. So I like to compare it to health. So you're going to do certain activities and behaviors, and you're going to show up on a consistent and regular basis doing those activities. And then one day you'll look in the mirror and think and or believe, I'm healthy. That's not the day you stop doing all those activities, because as soon as you stop doing those behaviors, activities, and routines, you're on the decline of getting further away from the goal of being healthy. Productivity is the very same thing. It's an accumulation of choices that we make every day, and sometimes it's even every hour of how we're going to be investing our time. And so it's not a destination. Like, I don't see it as a finish line. I see it as a skill set that we have and we execute on a consistent basis, because it actually will serve us well in all areas of our life, not just business.
So very true. So very true. I know that I've missed the last week going to the gym, and they've already called me. Don't lose your gains. Get back in the gym. And I'm like,
oh, that is great accountability.
It is. I'm like, I'm coming. I just had a couple of things happen. But I think it's the same way. People do that even on the financial side. You know, they make all these choices to get it right, and then they get it right and they walk away and don't look at it again. And they wonder why it went back into decline. And it's because we're not caring for it. And so what we care for is what, stays healthy. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love, you did mention the word choice in there. And, given that my podcast is Profit's Choice, I'm all about the choices that we make. And so I do love that you're talking about productivity doesn't just, again, like I say, profit doesn't happen by accident. I don't think productivity does either. All of these things are being very intentional about our choices in that moment for what we need to do.
Absolutely. I, over the years, came to the conclusion that productivity is a choice. And so when I heard your podcast name, when we met, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally get that. And I didn't put two and two together that I said it that often until I was renting a co-working space. So I rented an office, and so there's other business owners in the building. And one of the ladies walked in and was talking to me, and my son, at the time he was 7. It was like one of the many days off of school that they have. He has his earphones on his iPad, and he's watching his movie or playing his little game. And I'm talking to her, and he literally leans over and takes his headset off and says, productivity is a choice, and puts his headset back on. So he was like listening to our conversation, and he felt like that's what to be said. And I was like, well, we know our little ones literally hear everything we say, right? Like that. And so he was able to mirror that back to me, that apparently I say that a lot. And I was like, well, what is that? And that's when I delved deeper into, it really is a choice, because we can choose a path, right? We can say, yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're going to do that. And it's not, then you have to make that choice again when you sit down at your desk, or again when you get off the next call. And so that's why I like to think about it as a choice, because, it empowers us and takes ownership. Yep.
Exactly.
It's ownership, because now we're not giving that power away to anybody else or anything else, right? Like, we're not saying, oh, I had a tough day, a bad client, the whatever, you fill in the blanks. You're giving that ownership away. So now you say, I have a choice. It
Right.
just changes everything.
It changes everything. I have my tagline in my email says, if you own it, you can change it.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's the same kind of thing. I can change, direct, and redirect what I have ownership of. I cannot do anything about what I don't own.
Right.
I really just I don't have the same level of impact. So Amber, when you started, so you mentioned about working in real estate and coaching, but what made you dive deep into productivity and how did you do that?
Yeah. So when I was a coach, a team building coach. So I was coaching our top sales executives on how to leverage through building teams. And the seed, just to further that story, was like they had these resources right at their fingertips. And that's when I realized that perhaps this is a skill set, that there's a gap. There's something missing that had they possessed and executed on, they could have taken advantage of, fill in the blank. This is coaching to leverage your team, but you could fill that in for every conference you attended and webinar you traded. Like, you have the knowledge, but what's the disconnect of execution? And I had my son 9 years ago, and I took all my vacation and all my maternity. And about 3 weeks before I was going to go back, I went in and resigned. And it was I had been with the company. It had been my entire adult career was with this company. I didn't know what I was going to do, but the commitment to my husband was to stay home for the first 2 years until my son could go to preschool versus daycare. And when I resigned, the COO leaned over the table, and you got to imagine like this huge, muscular bodybuilder guy. And he's like, "Good for you for choosing family over business." And in the same breath, he said, "Would you like to stay on as a consultant?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Oh my gosh, like, I came in here to quit. Let me talk to my husband. I don't know. What does that look like?" And he's like, "It could be on your terms, nap times, night times, whatever. This is what we'd like to keep you for." And what they wanted to keep me for was the efficiencies, the processes. They were, doing acquisitions in other markets. So, like, what is that workflow and what does that look like? And it was then when I realized, like, oh, if I can do that for them, I could probably do that for other companies. Right. And again, I don't think that, I don't want to paint a picture like it was just this one aha. I woke up in the morning and my business was crystal clear, right? It was a series of little seeds that were planted. And so when I first started, I actually wasn't in productivity. I actually first did organizational consultant, which was helping with systems and organizing. And I realized really quickly that businesses don't see organizing as a necessity. It was a luxury. And so, like, wake up to like marketing 101 hat as a business owner, right? And then I switched to efficiency consultant, and I did the exact same things, but I retitled myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now it was seen as a necessity, not a luxury. And my business blew up locally. And along the way, I realized that if you really wanted to get sustained results long term, it really needed to be rooted in the behaviors and choices and mindset of the business owner, because you can organize a space, you can create a process, a system, but you go back a few months later or there's any kind of turnover, if it doesn't start from the top down, it wasn't sustained change. And that's when I fell in love with, like, about 5 years ago, productivity, and just niched down because of the necessity and the results that it provides.
That's fantastic. I think even my business has shifted and changed over the years, and it's been seeds that were planted. There was never this one big aha, and this is exactly the form that it's going to take. It definitely, I tried to give it room to breathe.
Yes, yes. When you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like seeds are being planted or you're making this massive shift, but it's always in hindsight when you're like, oh, that was a great shift, or, it seems much clearer.
Yeah, we don't even recognize the moments sometimes as being as impactful as we do further down the road, and we realize that was a moment that things changed.
Absolutely.
So let's dig into productivity a little bit, since that is where you focus. And we mentioned even before we jumped on the quick call, but productivity, that word can evoke different ideas and definitions to different people. What are some of the definitions that people use for productivity? And then I want to hear what your definition is.
Yes. I think that some of the most popular definitions are just like the amount of work that gets put out from your business. Productivity could mean the same as time management, like that they're just one and the same, and they're not. To me, they're not. There's so many different
Efficiency. We
experiences.
hear that a lot.
What do you hear?
Just efficiency.
Oh, yes, exactly. Efficiency. I think there are so many because everyone has a different relationship experience. And when you said it evokes, it also evokes a different emotions, right? Like some people are like, oh my gosh, I love it. Give me a calendar, give me something, this and that to organize. And other people are, may have already came to the belief that they're not made that way. They weren't born that way. And I don't think that that's true either. So my definition of productivity is one that can be laid over anything that is important to you in your life. So productivity is investing your best time into your best activities. And so it's a framework definition that can be laid over our relationships, our health, our businesses, really anything that we are trying to achieve and create. It takes investing your best time, which is focused, distraction-free, undivided time into the activities that we've identified that will propel us towards those goals, right? And so what is your definition? What was your definition? I'm wondering what your definition of productivity was.
Well, I think it's very similar. I had not really thought about it in terms of a framework. Mm-hmm. And I totally, the minute you say it, I'm like, well, that's the same. You and I have said it. We could almost take out the word productivity and put profit in a lot of them when we're looking at a framework. But I think of it very much the same thing. Like, does it really mean that you're productive or that you have a good productivity mindset if you're doing stuff that doesn't matter? Like, for example, is this all about me checking off something on a checklist to say that I checked it off? Or is it checking off the most important pieces? And because I went through, the Dale Carnegie, the time management, all that from corporate, I learned very quickly, what is my big goal? Mm-hmm. What are my quarterly goals? And what are the big things that I need to do to make that happen? And those are the things that take priority on my list to get done. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't those screaming moments of things that have to get done.
Yes.
But, your dog's sick and you have to go to the vet. Well, I can't say, I'm sorry, I'm busy this quarter. I'll catch you.
Right.
Like that. It's not the way that happens. But when it comes down to my time in my business, I'm a follower of the 12-week year. And I really love that because we don't wait to get everything done. And so to me, being productive is working every moment, every day, every week, every month, every quarter to get to where I want to go, knowing that it's baby steps that build.
Right.
That's kind of the way that I see productivity.
Okay, excellent. So I have a little bit of just a different or add-on and. So I don't believe that we are made to be productive all day, every day. And the reason is because we couldn't possibly run real businesses and live real lives and truly be productive all the time. And sometimes we have a belief that we should be, and when there's a gap of like how much time we should be productive, we either do one of two things. It self-sabotages, we get in our head, or we start negotiating what type of activities are considered productive activities, and you dilute that and you wash it down. And then pretty soon you can't discern the difference between busy work and very productive work. And okay, awesome. Yeah. But
because I even allow myself to look at my list and say, what if I don't do that? Will it matter? And then I give myself the ability. So when I say every moment of every day, I just mean that the moments that we are dedicating to look at something, certainly not every moment of every day, because I am so much happier eating a piece of chocolate and walking around outside or hanging out. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
But I hear your point, and I think it's one that is definitely is one that needs to be made. We're not robotic.
No. And just this little flip of the script of saying, okay, so I'm not meant to be productive all day, every day. Today, my goal is to be productive, or this week, my goal is to be productive 2 hours of every day. So then now what happens is you hold that time sacred and you fill it with the most productive activities. And then that consistency, and you're building that routine and habit, and you can build up on that. And then it's 2.5 hours, and then it's 3 hours, or as you're building your team, you're expanding that time, right? Or you live a real life and you're in a season of your life where the kids are out of school and you're having family trips and reunions, and so maybe you're cutting that back and it's 3 days a week. But it's about getting a very, very specific goal and then negotiating yourself out of those high value activities, to be able to just consistently move the ball forward, right? Consistently hitting your milestones of your weeks and your monthly goals and your quarterly goals.
One of my clients said yesterday as well, she said that they've instituted something in her office called a power hour.
Yep.
And in that power hour, nobody can interrupt or talk to anybody else, including themselves. So they can't get distracted. They can't interrupt themselves. They can't go rabbit chasing. It's their hour of productivity. And
yes.
She said, and it may change from day to day, but every day they have one power hour. And she said it made them actually stop and realize how much they were interrupting each other, just to ask, like, where is this? Or what do you know about that? Instead of kind of compiling all the questions and dealing with them in batch form. And that it has been, she said her team is loving it and have asked for more power hour.
Yes. So that helps when you're working with a lot of people, right? Because you can be distracted or interrupted, but that's building a culture of holding the value of productivity and really giving employees what they need to do their best. And by having that same time for everybody, I could see how that would maximize the productivity versus saying, okay, you get an hour, you decide, you get an hour, you get to decide, but then people still have needs because they're in an activity that needed collaboration or
That's
conversation.
right. Mm-hmm.
So I can see that to be very valuable.
But I love what she said. She said, I even had to stop myself from interrupting myself. Right? Which
all the time.
I think to me, I interpret that as what you said, trying to renegotiate even within ourselves.
Yeah.
Of how we should spend the time instead of really identifying what is most important here and now. And so let's take a step forward and let's talk about, you said best time, doing your best activities, investing your best time. Let's start with just defining what is best time. What does best time mean?
Right. So best time is very similar to what you were just explaining with the power hour. Is it's devoted time that's distraction free, interruption free, and that you're just giving your sole focus to it. Okay. And it's one of those times, and we've all experienced it, maybe not as consistently as we'd like, is when we get in our zone of work and literally a bomb could go off and you wouldn't know. Like you are just so laser focused in the work and you feel like you're in your groove and it feels so good. Well, we don't want that to happen by accident. We want to create that as consistently as possible in our days and our weeks.
So it's interesting from working with clients over the years, similar to you, and even in my own life, I know that different activities, I have a different best time.
Yes.
Right. So for example, if I've got to do heavy math or heavy calculations, or even do things that I don't necessarily love to do or don't feel maybe as skilled at, the best time for me is early in the morning. Because I can just do it. I can focus. I can put my head down and I can get it done. If I wait until after lunch to kind of do those things where I feel like I'm struggling or I'm weaker, my body, I don't get up super early, but I get up before 6 o'clock.
Right.
But those first few hours, I am the person that wakes up and comes downstairs and I make my coffee and my brain turns on. My family can't stand that because they turn on for about an hour, but mine is on and ready to go. And that's almost like prime crunching time for me. Like
that's great.
6 and 8 a.m. I can probably get done as much as a lot of people get done in a day because the world hasn't started around me. My email's not dinging and people aren't bothering me and I can just think Do you know?
Yeah, I love that you gave such a great example of that. I have similar example. So I am an extrovert. I get energy from people. So if people don't really know introvert and extrovert, it's not a level of how much you like talking to people. It's really is it energy? Does it give you energy or does it deplete your energy? And for me, it gives me energy. So I structure my day on purpose that all my client appointments, all of my meetings, nothing happens until after 11 a.m. And the later in the afternoon, the better. So all client meetings start at 1, a 2 o'clock, a 3 o'clock, and sometimes a 4 o'clock. And the reason is because I can be exhausted. I could have had a big day, little sleep. It doesn't matter really what's going on. I can show up my A game when I'm with people because that's where I get my energy. Now, if I tried to do like business building, content creation, outlining my next podcast, writing an article or a course at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it wouldn't happen. My willpower is depleted. I don't have the right energy level. If not distracted by my dog or my family or employees, I will self-distract and sabotage because that seems more fun than doing the thing. So I'm similar to you. I just found that actually with people, it doesn't matter. It could be my most productive time. And so that's when I am investing in servicing my clients because it's an alignment with energy.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, I can meet with clients just about any time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually, I think I'm probably, I have never really, I'm right down the middle of everything. Like I'm some unicorn, but some people would totally think that I'm extroverted because I like to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's draining for me. Maybe because of the types of conversations that I have.
Right.
It takes a lot of energy to think and to be on my toes all the time. But I still could. I mean, if I do meetings mine go from 9 to 5, 2 days a week. So I meet with clients 2 days a week.
Okay.
9, 10:30, 1, 2:30, and 4. And so I have them scheduled out, and that's what I do. And then I have just enough time in between to catch an email, run to the bathroom, walk the dogs,
yeah,
any fire, and move on to the next thing. But then I usually try to create 2 full days, like Tuesdays and Fridays, that are focused on my business and my creation and my content. Thursdays are all podcasts. So I've got everything very much broken out so that I can stay in zones instead of jumping back and forth in zones. And then I feel like, or at least for me, I can get more done and my head stays in a game instead of always feeling like I'm shifting my thought patterns. But I know I've had clients that have come to me and said that they were more night owls. And, I should layer the introvert extrovert on top of it. But many of them can't do math before noon. like I can do it all day because I do really love it. But if I'm doing heavy calculations and number crunching, I really prefer mornings. But I've got some that say that there's certain tasks or certain activities, certain ways of thinking that they literally shift towards the later part of their day, which would be when I'm exhausted. That's when they're getting their second wind or they're ready to go because, they sleep so late. Do you see that too? I mean, it could be different for different people.
It's different for everyone. Like, I think that, having to wake up early is a myth of productivity. I don't think that is needed at all. I think that it's what you do with the hours you are awake. And if you are a night owl, like your client said, well, are they having productive night owl hours or is it, vegging out and Netflixing and that's why they're not a morning person? That I don't define that as a night owl. I think that that's a choice in like where you're putting your time and energy and sleep. But if there are people, there's lots of creatives that get their second wind at night and they do their best work. And I say lean into that. If that's it, then how can you create your time schedule life around maximizing your best times?
Right. So we may all have like a general best time. I think the reason I love 6 to 8 a.m. so much is that truthfully, the world's not revolving yet. I mean, we all know it really stops all night, right? But for me, I'm not bombarded with emails yet. I don't have a lot coming in. And I know that as soon as we get past 8:30, 9 o'clock, my day's starting with needing to support the needs of others.
Yeah.
That's the business that I have. And so I can support the needs of my own business. And that kind of time that's kind of my sacred time. I get up, I get my coffee. I usually read my Bible. I might read a couple of chapters in a business book or something for me. And then I go to work and I focus on what I know absolutely has to be covered that day. And then I can breathe and kind of get through the rest of it. But other people have different ways. I love that you said it's finding what works for them and identifying the best time for a best activity.
Yes. So my belief in everything I teach is there are specific principles to productivity, but how you apply those principles to you is to do it in a way that feels authentic, and it's all in an effort and the goal of to show up our best selves. And when we do that, we do our best work. And if we are showing up as the self that read a book that was told to fit in a box, and this is the activities and this is the way to be productive, then what happens is then now we label ourselves and say, I'm not productive, I can't do this. We get in our mind with really negative things that don't serve us and rather sabotage how we ultimately show up and do our best work. So it's a vicious cycle. So anytime I can empower or invite someone to really go through a discovery process of where do they do their best work, how do they do their best work, and how do they find their best time, it may be exactly opposite of your best friend, your spouse, or even who you were a couple years ago. So, for me, here is a really classic example. I left corporate and I was in management. And so every good manager has their door open with cubicles outside and you answer the questions, but it's a lot of noise and hustle and bustle. Well, in that environment, because it was all that I knew, I was able to do my best work and find focus. But when I came home to work, I thought, oh, I'm going to nail this. Like, this is going to be unbelievable. I don't have any interruptions. It's so quiet. Yeah, I was cussing at the bird outside my window and cursing at the mailman that was making noise. Like everything, every car that drove by, every little bird that went by my window distracted me. And I'm like, what is this? This doesn't make sense. So I spent the first year and a half of my business when I started. If I wasn't with a client, I was in a coffee shop. And I could do my best work with the blender going, lines, people cackling, like all this noise. And I would sit in the corner and the owner of this coffee shop would joke that I would have to pay rent soon because I was there so often to try and replicate the environment that I had learned to do my best work.
Wow.
And so I think that we need permission to really, if something seems like, oh, that makes sense, try it. Experiment with it. If you're doing your best work, don't judge it. Just figure out how to do more of it.
I love that. So I did corporate for the first 10 years, same kind of thing, office, cubicles, the whole noise. And now it's funny because I work from home and I have an office with the doors shut. It's very quiet in here. And now I hear every distraction. I hear every single thing. And I've also gotten to where I need things to be quiet. Like I don't listen to podcasts in the background because I've got to focus. I listen to all that on my on separate time, but I don't listen to music. I don't have ambient noise. It's the air conditioning and the ceiling fan. That's like all the noise that I have.
And so now it's changed for you, just like it has for me. I sit in a quiet office now in my home. And so that's why I'm saying, like, sometimes if the thing that worked for you is no longer working, experiment and shake it up and change it up.
Yeah.
I was way before my time. Like you can download apps now and music tracks that simulate being in a cafe, because now so many people have stumbled upon that, like that's their best environment, is that kind of, white noise, you would call. Yeah.
So I'm even weird. I'll take my earbuds and I won't plug them into anything. I'll just put them in my ears and it blocks the birds and it blocks.
Yes.
So that in my quiet, I
love that
in my ears. And then I literally, it keeps me in my head and instead of allowing it. So I don't do it all the time, but if there's something that I need to almost hyper focus on, I've learned what I need to do to block even the air conditioning coming on and off or anything, because I know that maybe sometimes my mind wants to drift and I'm trying to force it to stay in the moment to just get that done.
I love that suggestion. I've
My
never heard
husband
that
will say,
before.
"You've got your and I've still got the ones with the long string. Like I don't have the AirPods." And he's like, "That's not plugged into anything." I'm like, "I'm a or I'll hold my Kindle. I'll put my earbuds in and hold my Kindle." And he's like, "Michelle, that doesn't go to any." I know, I'm aware. I'm blocking all of you. I'm blocking your breathing. I don't want to hear that anymore.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. So really in a nutshell, your best time is how do you do your best work? And for many of us, we are going to have to experiment and try things and also change it up depending on what type of activity, like we talked about. So time of day and or what kind of environment we do our best work. For example, it had been a week where I was doing a lot of creating. I hit a wall. Sunday came and I said, my boys were watching a movie I wasn't interested in. So I grabbed a glass of wine and went to the patio. And in 45 minutes, I had broken through every wall that I was hitting behind my desk, behind the computer, because it was a beautiful summer night. It was quiet. I was in my zone. I was relaxed and I just let it come instead of forcing it. So again, it was about doing the same activity in a different time in a different place that really set it up for success.
My sons have laughed at me. They're like, "Mom, I think if you could write off a room in the house, you should write off all of them. Because every time we turn around, you're working in another room."
That's great.
And it's not true, but I have found that based on, I think a certain way in my office. And I've found that when I've got certain types of creative things to do, I literally approach it differently in my dining room, in my kitchen, in my family space, and out on my porch, which is like your patio. Some of my best work lately in the last year and a half, 2 years since we just got it, have been out in the porch because I feel like I'm up in the trees. And it just feels different. It's like this relaxation. And like you said, things come to me differently. And so if I get stuck sometimes, especially when I'm working on my business, I can just pick up and go somewhere else. And I see things differently. So I love that you've given us permission, that doesn't make us weird. That makes us closer to productive. So I like
yes. Gosh, if I could just sing that from the rooftops, it doesn't make you weird or right or wrong. And now we get a choice to say, okay, I identified that, check. Now the question becomes solution mode. How do I create more of that? How do I replicate
that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our best time for what's first. Let's talk about what are our best activities. And I love too how, again, Amber, that you've shared this is a framework. So we can move this, let's just real quick, just to show the parallel here. I know that if there's something I need to talk to my husband about, best time really does matter.
Oh, yes. Right? For all of us that have husbands.
Amen. Or children. I've got grown adult sons. If I need to share information with them, time matters. When I speak to them matters. What I can talk to when they first wake up, what I can say to them in the morning, what I can say through text, and what I can say, in the evening. So I again, your framework picks up and matters, because by being productive in that, I mean productive in our conversation, productive to get to where we need to in that moment. So I love that. I love this framework. It makes me super happy.
So I'm going to share just a quick example story of how I lay this over a personal relationship. Okay. So this isn't, black and white. It isn't a checklist. It is truly like a goal, and it's something that matters, and it's our time. So I have one son, and over the year, he's 9 now, but his love language is quality time. And for all of you parents out here listening, tell me you don't understand they get picked up from school, they have after school activities, you get homework, you get dinner, you clean up the kitchen, it's shower time, and then the kids are in bed. The week has gone by and you're like, kids, what? Like nothing's come out of my mouth except instructing them to go to the next thing and do the next thing. And so for me, because I know that quality time is important to my son, and what's really important overall, my goal is the relationship I have with my son. And I really clearly see what that looks like. My most productive time every single day at 8:15 at night is 30 minutes in his room. And that has changed over the years. It was first reading to him, and then it was reading to me. And now we do games and quizzes and trivia. And it just gives him a time and place to talk. And I can ask him 100 times what happened at school today. it doesn't happen until we're just casually having a conversation. So my best time is that undevoted time. Now, I'm a business owner, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I have employees. Are there not 100 other things that I could be doing or wanting to do at 8:15 at night? Surely, right? Even sometimes it's like, I just want to veg out. Well, what I hold sacred is making that commitment that I'm going to show up for that 30 minutes and give him my undivided time, because compounded over time, that is propelling me towards this ultimate goal. And so for me, it's not just the work we do. It's not just something we get off our checklist or a project we complete. It's how we show up in our lives on the things that matter.
I agree with that. My husband and I have done the same thing, making sure we've had date nights or times that we can connect, and then also to be able to connect with our kids. But I do the same thing with my girlfriends, right?
Yes.
Pick up productivity and take this framework. I've got some girlfriends that it matters to me to what I call do life with them, not to just intersect at a couple of points. Those are good too, and I have some friends like that. But I've got one or two friends that I literally walk life with them. We're connected. And it matters to me.
It matters. And that's why they show up on your calendar, right?
That's right.
You schedule it in and you make it happen. I have a few friends that when we meet, our commitment is we all pull our calendar out and we find the next date and put it on the calendar. Because now we're not doing that back and forth. And like when we have time, we'll schedule it. And what matters will show up on our calendar.
Right. I always tell people I can tell what matters to you by looking at your checkbook and now these days your credit card, your checkbook, credit card, and your calendar. Because if it matters, we're going to invest a resource that we have. And our resources are our time, effort, and energy, and then our money.
Yes.
So again, that's why they go together. All right. So we know best time, best activities. What are best activities? How do we define a best activity?
Okay. Well, first of all, the reason we're talking is because productive activities defined in our businesses are 100% tied to profitability.
Woohoo!
Yes. And I don't just say that on your podcast. I mean it with all my heart. So we are business owners.
You said that on your own podcast. So I agree. I've heard it and I know.
Yes. So I know for a fact that we are in business to make a profit. And with that profit, this is my opinion, then we can make the impact we want, whether that shows up in our families, our communities, and our businesses, employing additional people, making our vision and our mission go further. It starts with money. Even nonprofits make money to use as a resource to do good in the world. And if we are not focused on making a profit in our business, we will be out of business. And that right there can literally put a tear in my eye, because it's not just a business that went out of business. It's a dream that got shattered. It's an entrepreneur that wanted to show up and serve the world in a certain way, and they don't get to anymore because they weren't profitable. And it didn't mean they didn't have value. It didn't mean that they couldn't help people. It's because the profitability wasn't a priority. And the way that I show up is teaching owners, business owners, and entrepreneurs how to invest their time in those activities that make an impact in profitability in the business.
Well, if you're looking for a job, I guess I'm hiring as of today.
Now, if you're listening, you guys know why Michelle and I had hit it off so well, is because, I mean, my hands are flying right now. Like, I am so passionate about this topic.
Yeah. And I certainly am too. And I agree with you. It's an impact that was never made if you're not profitable. I love how Mike McCallum, he was on the podcast last year, and I know Mike and have spoken with him as well. And one of the things that he says, and I love this, he says, sales are responsibility. Profit is sustainability. And that's the truth. Profit is what sustains us to keep going. And I look at profit the same way that you do, as it's the ability to make an impact. And then how you define that impact, what you want that impact to be in different seasons of life can change. But we are missing an opportunity to create an impact if we don't have a profit.
That's right.
I always say we have resources, we have time, we have money. How do you spend them? Spend them wisely. Yep. And so with these activities that we're choosing as best activities, they are profit producing or profit forward.
Yes.
types of activities. What types of activities? I mean, to me, the first one that comes to mind is marketing. We've got to market. I mean, I just think there's no way to be productive if we don't have some people coming in to work with us. So
Right.
the whole
Okay.
advertising
So,
slash marketing in some way shows up or is the first thought for me.
and you're, in my opinion, 100% correct. So I break down our most productive activities into 4 buckets.
Okay.
And the first bucket is marketing and visibility, because just like you said, if that bucket's not full, and I want you to think of these buckets with like cash coming out of them. Okay. So I have a PDF. I have a PDF at the end of this episode that I'll share, and there's a big image on the front with these 4 buckets, and in the buckets is like cash falling out of them. And so when you are putting your time into this bucket and it's overflowing, you get to go to the next bucket. But the first bucket is marketing and visibility, and everyone is going to have their different way of doing this. And there is many ways as you've heard doing this. Somebody's been successful at doing it. Okay. So it's not, you need to find the way you're going to fill this bucket up for you, your business, and in your industry. But essentially all it is telling the world how you can help them and who you are. That's it. Like, how can you help them? What service do you provide? And who you are. When you do that enough, and that's overflowing, and you can fill in the blanks with social media, blog posting, podcasting, a billboard in your local city, like any way, then the second bucket that you could be investing your time in is sales. Now, sales, as I define it, is just the conversation of asking for the business. What this isn't is having coffee with somebody and then being like, oh, that was a sales conversation, because if they wanted to work with me, they know what I do and they would have said something. No. That's building a relationship. That's rapport. That's your network. That is not in the sales bucket. So the sales bucket is that you are offering a proposal. You are specifically asking for the business. You are giving an estimate. Whatever that looks like, that's a high value activity. And when we're doing that a lot and enough, and we should see that on our calendar consistently, then that fuels our serving our clients bucket. And the servicing our clients bucket is a tricky bucket, because when we are service-based entrepreneurs, meaning we are actually doing, giving, or providing the service that we're exchanging money for, we can find ourselves living in the servicing our client's bucket, and tell ourselves that that's okay because I'm servicing my client. That's where the money's at. But I know that that's not true. Our listeners know that's not true, because as we lift our heads up from servicing our clients and then we see our revenue go up and go down, it's probably in a line with you were heads down servicing your clients and not investing time in your marketing and visibility, and then by then not in the sales bucket. So it becomes this vicious cycle of, putting all your time, energy, and focus in the servicing clients and maybe not spreading it out over the first 3 buckets.
So I'll just interrupt for 1 second and say, here's what I see and what I have helped work with a lot of my clients with. They get to your point, they are so busy with these really big jobs, or a lot has come in, and they stop marketing because they think, I can't take another job. And then what happens is they wrap up that project, and there's a 3 to 6 month lull to rebuild that sales funnel.
Yes.
To fall back into it. And I usually say, when you're the busiest, I want you marketing. And it feels counterintuitive, but trust me, you're not going, you can put them on a wait list, you can push them out, but it's going to be harder to go back and start over to pull them in.
Yeah. I mean, it's like pushing a boulder uphill, and you've lost your momentum if you stop and you're not consistent with it, for sure. The whole servicing our clients, this is an area in which I look at from a coach consultant standpoint, is how do we create the most efficiency in this bucket so that you can reallocate time consistently to the other buckets? And that's where, efficiency comes in. When we're looking at being efficient on the right activities, what that does is reclaim time to now invest in other activities. And so if you're currently I have a client I just was working with yesterday. And the first bucket that we looked at was servicing his clients, because when we audited his time, that's where a large portion of his time was going. That's not a bad thing, but it doesn't allow for additional time to be invested in the first two buckets that ultimately fuels the servicing client bucket.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got our marketing visibility.
Yep.
That gets full, it drips over into the sales.
Mm-hmm.
That bubbles up and it drips over into servicing our clients. And then where do we drip?
And then the fourth bucket is actually something that I added a couple years ago, which is the leadership bucket. And I think it's a very important bucket because you are not always going to be the person doing marketing and visibility. You may hire that out or have a contractor or get a coach or someone that's going to help you with that. Maybe you have somebody internal that is specifically doing all your social media. Okay, that's great. That means that bucket's being filled and not necessarily by you, but now it's consistently being filled. You may even find that maybe sales was your weakest skill spot, or you could use additional help in sales. So you hire your first sales rep. And then also down the road, like as your business grows, most certainly you're not going to be the only one servicing your clients. And so what happens is, as we are wearing our CEO hat and we're shifting, one of the highest value, biggest return on investment of our time can be is investing in our team. And that's a leadership bucket. It's having one-on-one meetings. It's giving your team what they need to exceed or excel. Because every minute that we're investing in someone else is truly an investment in ourselves and our businesses, because now you're finding leverage through others. And why I added this is because I had just spoken with too many business owners and CEOs that were reluctant to invest their time into leadership activities because they thought they needed more important things to do. And yet it was a large portion of what they were investing their time in. And so just like many of the things we've already spoken about is, well, how do we shift that mindset? Actually, you are a leader, and the more you pour into them, the more they're going to help you grow your business. So it's a very most high productive activity we can do, honestly, as small business owners.
Right. I would agree with that. And we do sometimes think about that as being a time waster instead of a time multiplier.
Yes.
And it becomes a time multiplier, like you said, because then they're working on our behalf and we're working that same time doing another value add type of activity.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of just one activity that may take you 30 minutes, let's say twice a week, so that's an hour, but it's every week, okay? And you had to spend an hour and a half, I'm doing a whole word math problem, and you had to spend an hour and a half teaching your employee to do that thing. When is your break-even point? A week and a half in, you're already breaking.
Right.
And so after that week and a half, every time they are doing that activity, you've now reclaimed 30 minutes. That's a good investment. Like, even if it took like 3 hours to teach them, in a couple of weeks, you will already be reclaiming your time. Now, multiply that by not just one 30-minute activity, but another one and another 15-minute one and another one. You are actually, every minute that you are pouring into them, you're getting back more time. And we can't make more time. This is the only way we can really buy back time in our businesses.
That's exactly right. I use it. I use a similar example when I am teaching about this in a family situation. And it's like, you remember when your kids are 2 and you're in there brushing their teeth every single night, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh. And then at some point when they learn to brush their teeth, you now have reclaimed all that time, and you don't have to go to college with them and brush their teeth.
Right.
Bathroom habits, right? But at the time, sometimes we think this is kind of that, I would say, the lie we tell ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little harsh, but it's true. It's faster if I just do it myself. Versus if I can stop and invest in a different person to do this for themselves and to help everybody, then I don't have to do it. So by me teaching the first child to brush his teeth, it freed up time for me to teach the second child to brush his teeth, and to go get my own teeth brushed and not fall in the bed without mine. So just saying, it sounds crazy, but again, it's that same framework that we can pick up and put into other aspects of our life. Sharing and teaching other people how to do things really does come back and help us. And it alleviates so much stress.
Yes.
you know?
And it also gives them the ability to take ownership, or back to that word, right, over the activity, because now you've coached them, you train them, you're there as support, but you're not doing it for them and you're not
Right.
micromanaging them, right? And so it really sets up a great culture in our companies as well by empowering them to take ownership over it.
Right. And then everybody feels like they're a part of a solution and they want to move forward. It does build a great team.
Yes,
When
yes.
you can do that. So our productivity focus can shift over time. Like there are times that we're going to be focused maybe more on marketing than we would on leadership. It doesn't mean that we don't necessarily define out a time for each of these each week or over, a month or whatever, but we can find ourselves needing to focus in one place more than another. Is that correct?
Yes. And so it's seasonal, it's based on our goals, but it's also the type of work you do. If you have few clients and they're large projects, then your consistency might be showing up in marketing and visibility once a week versus every day, right? And so it's really just an alignment of identifying the activities that will let you attain your goals, and everyone's goal is different, so therefore everyone's activities will be different. It's about just having very purposeful, thoughtful intention about those activities. And then everything else that I teach and talk about, our strategies, is how do you hold that time sacred? How do you show up? How do you make sure that's consistent? Because if we're disorganized and we have inefficiencies and our team isn't working for us and all of these things that are real life and real business stuff, that the first thing that gets impacted is the time we invest in these high value activities, which then affects our businesses.
Yeah, that's true, because people tend to go, oh, well, this client's upset or this is happening. And all of these things go by the wayside because they don't see them as immediate profit builders. And they see, these are sometimes long range profit builders.
Yes.
And they don't see that. And so they go to put out, the fire that's closest to them. And
right.
that's what absorbs their time. And then it's, like me getting out of the gym and then being called to come back, which is back. But again, it's that same thing. You kind of get out of a habit and then you have to get yourself back into that habit.
That's right.
It doesn't take much to take a step out of the habit.
Right. No, it doesn't. It takes vacation, someone getting sick, you getting sick, family member, kid getting sick. Those are the top reasons I often see, or a huge increase in clients. So those are the top reasons I see this going haywire, is just an influx of clients that you were not prepared for or don't have systems for. And then vacation, and then people getting sick or yourself getting sick. Those can always put a wrench in this. But just to tie this all up in a bow is that we live, again, we're running real businesses. And so when I was talking earlier about, our goal isn't to be productive all day, every day, it's about chunks of time. If it's these 4 activities or these 4 buckets and the activities you put in these buckets, well, what are you doing with the rest of your time, right? And that's this other bucket. And unfortunately, the other bucket is important. You still need to do things to run your business. You have to balance your, bank accounts. You have to, sometimes you're the janitor in your own business. Like, that's the real life. That's the other bucket. But the difference is where are you starting your time? Where are you putting the most importance on? Because there's something called Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law says
we love that in Profit First. We all about Parkinson's Law. Yes.
Isn't it? Yeah. So your audience knows about this very well. It's like, well, and tasks expand to the amount of time given. It's very similar, right? And so where you're putting your focus, and if it's in that other bucket first, it's going to expand, and you're going to, end your day and wonder, where did the time go? What did I do that really mattered? And so I encourage you to focus on these 4 buckets on a consistent basis. Fill in the rest of your day and all the gaps with the other bucket, but secondary.
So all right, so that wraps it up. But if people are listening and they're thinking, okay, so Amber and Michelle, that all sounds great. I hear you. I understand Parkinson's Law. I understand that I'm supposed to spend my best time doing my best activities, and I got the 4 buckets, but really, where do I start? Like, what do I do?
Right. Yeah. So where you need to start is getting really clear about your best time. And so I want you to experiment and find out, where are the pockets of time that you do your best work. And once you've identified that, that one time. It could be 1 hour a day. It could be, it could be 2 hours a week. Right now, depending on where you're at in your business, then I want you to make it the most productive use of your time and do that project or that activity that will propel you towards your goals. Start there, because wins create more wins. And it puts you in a really good mindset to then say, oh my gosh, when can I do that again? Or next time, can I push that to 90 minutes? And so start small, leverage your wins, and just stay consistent and keep expanding that. And then ultimately, everything else I talk about is how you can say yes to yourself more often and expand that time. And I come at it from multiple different angles, but really it's about how to leverage your mindset, how to leverage your time, which is what we were mostly talking about today, how to leverage organization, and then how to leverage your people. And so those 4 pillars are what I feel most influence us showing up and doing our best work.
I love it. I love it. I'm a fan. Raving fan.
This was so great.
It seriously mirrors what we're doing on the profitability side of things. I mean, I'm constantly asking those same types of questions. And my starting point is, show me your profit and loss, show me your money. Now let's figure out, what decisions are you making that are giving you that? And if that's not what you want, where do we change the decisions to get you what you want? So,
right.
It's very, very similar. So what's one of the next profit goals you have in your business?
Yes. So I am in the middle of launching a new group coaching program. So I have a very specific financial goal for that. And it's the beta. And so I plan on doing that here in September, October, and then replicating that multiple times next year as a primary revenue source in my business.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's funny, those things take months to plan. I mean, these are not quick. I'm going to come up and start this new group or start this new class, and then it's all of a sudden there. It is months and months and months in the making.
No, this was months and months pulling a team together, just wanting to create something that was really, really epic and what my audience wants and needs. And for me, I'm obviously a planner. Not everyone is a planner. So for me, this has been quite the project with the carrot at the end, which is how many people can I, show up and impact? Right now, a large portion of my business is one-to-one work, and that's not a fit for everyone. So really, this is about how do I provide what I do to more people, and then the profitability of changing my business model with this. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're talking about here, is changing my business model of where my primary revenue source comes from.
Yes, I completely understand. Amber, you have a podcast. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Productivity Straight Talk, where I talk all about productivity topics, time management, all the things we talked about today. I also have guests come on where I do entrepreneurial case studies where I highlight everyday entrepreneurs, their struggle with what particular area of productivity, how they overcame it, and how it has impacted their lives and businesses. My goal is really just to empower and encourage as many people as possible to find the way they show up best in their businesses. And they can find that anywhere you're listening to this podcast. Just go search Productivity Straight Talk.
Yeah, and we'll put a link in the show notes too, so they can find you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I also have a little freebie gift that I've been kind of alluding to throughout this conversation. So you can download a worksheet, and the same worksheet can be used 2 different ways. And I encourage you to do that, use it 2 different ways. The first way is to use it as to brain dump what specific activities fall under these buckets, so that you are clear that when you see that activity under marketing and visibility on your calendar, you know that you are investing your best time into your best activity. And so I want you to use it as, okay, this is when I am doing a one-on-one meeting with my team. This is a great leadership activity. And then the second way, once you're clear about what those activities are, a second way that you can utilize the same worksheet is actually using it as a time audit. So instead of the old traditional, like literally logging your time on everything, I want you to take the activity that you're doing and put it in one of these 5 buckets. So it's either the other bucket or one of the first 4 buckets. And at the end of a few days or maybe even 5 days, you will be able to see where your time is actually being spent. And then now you can address a particular bucket one at a time and how to create efficiencies for it, or how to delegate out of it, or how to delete and no longer do something, so that you can then really, really create the schedule and invest your time the way you want. So those are the ways I see using those worksheets. And if you want them, you can go to theproductivityspecialist.com/profit. We're going to do profit for Michelle today. So if you want to go get that download, you can go to theproductivityspecialist.com/profit.
Excellent. And I will have that in our show notes as well. And your website is theproductivityspecialist.com.
It is. Thank you.
Yep. Yes. And where can we find you? Are you hanging out on Instagram or Facebook or anywhere else?
My favorite is Instagram. I kind of fell in love with Instagram stories, but I am on Facebook as well. So wherever you're hanging out, I am. But if you're on Instagram, you can find me at Amber_De La Garza. Perfect.
Amber, thank you so much for sharing today. Thank you so much for letting me geek out with you.
I had so enjoyed this conversation.
I'm certain that you'll be back and that we'll have more conversations as we keep going. But I think I love the fact that you identified productivity as a framework. Best time, best activities to get you to your next profitability goal. And so then finding what's profitable for you, because it's all a choice, right?
It's all a choice. That's right.
Choice. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber, for joining us. Make sure to check out her podcast, Productivity Straight Talk. You know, I'm often asked about systems and processes and all the minutia of the day-to-day activities. And we're so focused sometimes on each tiny step that we miss the bigger picture. If you're unsure how to create a company plan for profitability, reach out and let us help you. The Designers Inner Circle was created to meet that need because we know that profit doesn't happen by accident, and neither does productivity.